Board right now. All right, excellent. So welcome to Plan Your Dream Trip Yellowstone. I'm going to discuss a variety of the experiences in and around Yellowstone so you can better make your plans. Just remember that seasons, that's the time of the year, matters. Like when you go, lead time matters. So how much time you have to plan your trip. And because one of those trips I made was just like, oh, Yellowstone's right over here, let's go. And so we didn't have too long to spend there, and it can get crowded certain times of the year. But Yellowstone, it's still a wild place. It is considered the most, by a lot of measurements, the most remote in the lower 48 states. So let me actually put that up here. The most remote in the lower 48 states, and that's measured kind of around this area, the Thoroughfare Ranger Station, which is the end of some trails, as you can see here. And if we zoom out, of course, you have to walk to get here, or in the winter, snowmobile to get here, if it's even allowed from certain directions. We can zoom out, we can see how far it is away from any roads or any kind of civilization, any kind of marked kind of census zones or anything like that. So we can see how far that is away from that, and even from the regular part of Yellowstone. So in that southeast corner, that is the area where that is. So just remind you, so that kind of planning is considered. You have to go a little distance if you're driving to get gas. It takes a long time to get from point A to point B if you're making plans and about how to get to those places. Really requires some planning ahead of time. It may look like it's only 20 miles away on the map, but then when you actually go by roads that go up and down mountains, wind around mountains, and go up and down, you're going to be taking that 20-mile trip might be about 40 or 50 miles for you at the end, and you won't be able to go like a 4-lane highway at full 55, 60 miles an hour. So it's one of the things to consider there. So there is the Yellowstone National Park. They always recommend, as we're going to do here, planning your trip is to make a plan. The National Park Service has a little information on there too if you want to go on further. Some top things to know. So you do have to, they suggest buying your entrance pass ahead of time, checking road statuses, which we're going to go into a little bit more detail too, a lot more planning ahead, seeing what's open and closed. Some other options right there to enhance your experience. The National Park Service has that up there for you, and we'll dive in some more details and make it more narrative for you as we go forward. And as we're recording, feel free to ask me questions, and I'll open up as I go slide to slide if you have any questions about the slide we're looking at. Just thinking about it, and any plan is just consider about how many days you're going to go, how many days you're going to actually be in the area of Yellowstone National Park, and also Grand Teton National Park. What is your own you or your family's personal comfort level in travel? Are you somebody that's happy sleeping on the ground in a tent, or are you somebody that likes a little bit more luxury, a soft bed every night, a warm meal? At night, a warm room, and then what kind of budget do you have? And of course, that budget is going to dictate your comfort, and your comfort might dictate how much you want to spend on the budget. And then what exactly the types of experiences you might be looking for. What's your range of experiences? And we'll see about what kind of range of experiences are there. There is obviously the experience of going to Yellowstone and seeing the range of natural beauty, but there's other types of experiences you can have, and other ways to experience in that natural beauty rather than driving to a parking lot, going out and looking at the waterfall, and driving on to the next thing. So, and also, like I said before, the amount of lead time you have, and once again, we'll talk about having a plan B, preparing backup options, those contingencies, and we'll see why those contingencies might matter as we go through and just discuss a little bit about the long and short history about the park and what's going on, just why you may want to have those. So let's go back way deep in geologic time as to what Yellowstone National Park is and why it draws people there because of its natural beauty. It is a geologic hotspot. It rests, most of the park rests upon a what's called a super volcano or a caldera. It is a hotspot underneath the earth. We see them across the globe. We also see one, in particular, the another one that we have within the United States is, I'm going to cough for a second, so I'm going to mute, is the Hawaiian Islands, and it's a group of islands that are moving over a hotspot that's underneath the Earth. As the crust of the Earth moves, there's kind of a thin spot that kind of remains, and it's kind of bubbles up. Um, this geologic hotspot ends at the end of the Snake River kind of valley. If you look on a map in Idaho, you see a long kind of twisting valley where the Snake River runs, and it ends up basically in Yellowstone National Park, and that's the end of where that caldera is. It rests on top of what is called a supervolcano, and it is a large caldera that has had eruptions. The most recent three eruptions of large eruptions have been 2.1 million years ago, 1.3 million years ago, and 640,000 years ago. So I don't know if you want to do on the math of that. It is maybe due. Not that that's going to keep you away. I think with all the measurement that we're going to show you here, we're going to know ahead of time whether that volcano goes. But if you're always interested in looking in more detail and seeing what's happening, the U.S. Geological Service does offer live monitoring on their survey options in the park about how they monitor the occurrences in the park and the region. So the caldera is this kind of central region here, kind of centered around the lake, kind of crosses over exactly where the lake is, but you can see all the little monitoring stations that they have throughout the park, whether it be measuring ground temperature, um, measuring GPS movement. So they've got little sensors there that that sense that the ground raises or lowers, that lets them know if there's kind of swelling of the magma or anything like that. But yeah, so that's what we have here, and that's the reason they're measuring this is they're kind of tied in with the beauty of the park. Is anybody familiar with the geologic activity that's happened in Yellowstone National Park? Of course, we have earthquakes. There are regular earthquakes in the park. Most of them are extremely minor, and you do not feel them. They are measured at about 1,000 to 3,000 a year. So if you take that 3,000 a year number, that's going about 8 or 9 earthquakes a day at the highest amount, and about 3 a day with the 1,000 number. So the regular earthquakes, you will probably never feel one or never sense one. They're so minor you don't feel them, but they are monitored throughout the park, and they register on the seismometers. And I'm back here to where you can monitor those if you like. You want news? The U.S. Geological Service has news about the Caldera Chronicles to kind of read about just the current research going on with the geologic history of the park. So really fascinating stuff if you love geology or anything like that. And then we move on to the hydrothermal features, or the hydrodynamic features, and those are the stars are the geysers, or if you want the British spelling or pronunciation, geysers. But geysers, mud pots, hot springs, taverning terrace, fumaroles, and those all lead to a lot of beauty and a lot of dangers. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But let's just talk a little bit about, show a little bit about what you have with geysers. The National Park Service has a live webcam if you ever want to monitor what's going on. Set an alarm for about 2:40, see if we can see Old Faithful going off. All right. So there's monitors around both on the webcams there. And all the geologic hotspots are very very specific to what they are. Now, just a little warning for you, if you are sensitive to smells, particularly the smells of kind of rotten eggs or cooking eggs or something like that, you'll have the smell of sulfur lingers around the geyser basins and some of the other the hydrothermal areas, such as the mud pots and hot springs. So if you are sensitive to smells, just kind of be forewarned of that, and then wonder about how you can go forward with that. I do recommend, and you should always heed the warning signs there. Just if it's not obvious, the hot springs are hot, the geysers are hot, the mud pots are hot, but something that you might not also know is not only are they scalding hot like you would have like a pot of coffee, they are also can be highly acidic. So they some these areas have a pH value of around 2, which matches some of the most corrosive acid you can find. And so not only if you come in contact with some of the water there, you fall in or anything like that, um, that can be more dangerous than even the heat. There are stories on a regular basis, possibly even every year, where people slip in or fall in. There are wooden paths around these geyser areas just to keep you off the ground because the ground is so sensitive and can be is not thin, not that you'll fall into the middle of the earth, but some of the areas are hollowed out by that geologic work, and the crust can be very thin for you. And so they build these paths to keep you on safe areas, but these paths can sometimes be wet, and so running or moving fast, you should be careful about that. You should always walk in a very sturdy way to get from place to place. Now, also keep in mind that because this is active, um, there are new thermal areas popping up. One just has recently popped up in the last few years by around kind of measured in 2001, but by 2009, the ground started changing, and then they started seeing steam come out of the ground in a brand new thermal area. So you can see just the heat of the area and these thermal areas and the trees dying out because of this new thermal area. So this is an active area, and there are new thermal areas going, and there are even some areas that they suspect might be dying out as well. So it's a moving target. Of course, that's over geologic time. So in our lifetime, we may not see too much more happen, but new thermal area is interesting. Of course, it's away from any kind of highly traveled areas, but yeah. If you're interested in books, let's talk about one of the books the library has to talk about geology of Yellowstone. And this is available in our resource. Hold on one moment. It's available in our resource called Hoopla. And that's a resource called Roadside Geology of Yellowstone Country. And this covers more than just Yellowstone, but some of the more geologically interesting areas, such as Teton National Park down the bottom, and some of the areas west of the park as well. And you can check it out from Hoopla, and Hoopla is a service. Let's just go ahead and show you how to get there. You can bring the app on your phone, but I always recommend going to the St. Louis County Library site first and go into our e-media section and exploring all of our media options, but particularly exploring Hoopla, and then using your library card to sign up. The cool thing about Hoopla is if you want to book for a travel book, and we'll get into this later, the books are always available to check out if you have a checkout credit. You get 10 credits a month in which you can check something out. So if you're a regular user of Hoopla and you're planning on getting a Yellowstone travel book, we'll talk about those details a little bit later, but managing that, or if you want to get this roadside geology book for Yellowstone County. But it's pretty easy. You just search. So normally I'd sign in. I want to show my sign-in credentials, but so just for instance, I'm doing search geology, Yellowstone. We can look here, and here we see the options right here. And here's Geology Underfoot in Yellowstone and some other Yellowstone books. Some are not travel books. Some have distinct other fictional purposes, but some interesting things. So there's one of the ways you use Hoopla, and we'll hop back into Hoopla a little bit later too. All right. Does anybody have a question about the geological history of Yellowstone, the deepest historical dive we're doing now? I'm going to move forward in time on the next slide. Okay. Here we are. All right. Let's move up into paleontological times. And let's look at a couple different things that lie in Yellowstone. Yellowstone, the park itself does have some fossil record and some record of other, in particular in the park because of the shifting and the rising of being on the continental divide. Some old rocks have been put up, and so we see some sea creatures show on the fossil bed there. But then in and around the park, there are a variety of fossils. There is fossil riches in Yellowstone. Here's an article in particular from once again, the U.S. Geological Survey about the fossil history of within the park. And mainly a thing you can view when you're within the park are the petrified trees or fossilized trees that lie within the park. And so we can see it just looks like a burnt out log, but these are pieces of stone that due to volcanic debris flow, as we mentioned before, has basically caused this tree to kind of like rest in place, but then turn to stone. And so it's really fascinating to see these laying around uh, the 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 park, little kind of like ancient forests, especially if you go to a time after fire and you see old just carbonized trees, and then you can see these old trees that are 50 million plus years old. It's really fascinating. And in and around the park, so we talk about the variety of experiences. Here's an experience you can have. And as you travel out west, also up north in Bozeman, there's a dinosaur museum, and north there in Montana, there are also options here. But in Thermopolis, which is a town just southeast of the park, so again, the distances kind of matter, but not too far. And speaking in the larger term of the park is the Wyoming Dinosaur Center and also dig sites, but an experience you might want to get into. This particular place and a couple other museums and a couple other vendors in the area do offer things. Dig for a day, and if you have kids, a special type of kids digs. So kids can go out and dig for fossils, particularly dinosaur fossils that are around there. Some of the sauropods and that have been around. So you can dig and perhaps find something awesome and amazing. Typically, it's smaller things like teeth or whatnot, but they're really cool experiences that you may be able to have. So, let's see what they are here. Let's see, is Old Faithful going yet? Not quite yet. All right. Does anybody have any questions about the paleontological time scale for looking at that? All right. Let's move on to a little bit sort of post Ice Age, post the last Ice Age, as people moved in. We can see that let's talk a little about the Yellowstone ecosystem and the flora and fauna that have overtaken since the last Ice Age. And Yellowstone was covered in a glacier, like most of northern Missouri was. And yeah, so we can see what's considered the Yellowstone greater Yellowstone ecosystem here in the two maps I'm showing. Um, one is the actual Greater Yellowstone map that's actually these are all federally administered lands, and these other ones are either um, both federally administered lands and state administered lands, as well as including some of the private lands which have been determined to be under some of the study areas, and others some state lands as well. So we have the options right here. Let's just talk about what the ecosystem means, because it's a unique ecosystem to North America. I'm going to go and log into our EBSCO ebooks here. Is that? Go and talk about how to get to this the EBSCO ebooks, and that's in particular looking once again, as we did with Hoopla, the books, eMedia, and more. If we just go to the eMedia section, and we can see another one of our eMedia resources. Now this it kind of has an app, but it's not optimized for an app. But here in the EBSCO ebooks, if we go to that, and we can log in. And you log in, as I'm doing from my home right now. It will ask you to sign in using your library card, and you can begin to search for books. And we know the book is, because I know this particular book is called Yellowstone Wildlife. It is a academic book on a little bit more popularized academic book from the University of Colorado Press about the ecology and natural history of the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. So if you want to read up and read on that, or go into this more popular book, that's from also from a university press, but Yellowstone Wildlife in Transition, and about how the wilderness and Yellowstone interacts with itself. So can review this here, and you can either download the PDF full text, or you can download it. Will be depending on the exact book you pick from this resource. You may have limited user access, but you can see this one has unlimited user access. When it's limited user access, we have a certain amount of copies we can loan. This one will be available for you to check out whenever you'd like, and you can take it with you, download it on your device, and go through and review some of the wildlife pictures and stories from the academic study in Yellowstone. All right, let's talk about some of the icons of the Yellowstone ecosystem, particularly the megafauna. We have bison. I'm sure everybody might be familiar with bison. You will very likely, unless you spend a very short time in Yellowstone, you will very likely see bison. You will very likely, as I'm going to talk about a little bit later about traffic jams, you'll very likely encounter bison utilizing the road space. There is a large bison management. Well, I want to talk a little bit about safety. Bison safety is key. Remember, these are animals that weigh as large as 2 motorcycles, or maybe even a small compact car that can gain a lot more speed than a compact car over short distances. They are very fast, and they can, in certain times, become very aggressive, and you want to avoid them as much as possible. Keep your distance on there. That's put out by Montana. There's also a large bison management area that the park covers, and about how they manage both with the state agencies, both the federal, both Yellowstone National Park, the national forests, the state agencies are around Yellowstone National Park, and how they manage the bison, and try to mostly keep them isolated to the park and certain other areas. There have been some for some Native American tribes who have also associated with helping out with bison numbers, either in the park, and also nations that are near the park. They've also taken some other bison options, and so you can see some bison has been transferred out of the park to other areas, whether it be to Wind River over here. And then the map of what that happened, because some of the ranchers in the area do not like bison getting around, and you can understand why, because they do well to try to keep their herds safe, and some of these bison carry a disease, I believe it's brucellosis, that is quickly transferred to cattle, and that can wipe out herds or cause sickness in herds and cause a loss of money. And so there's management working with the state of Montana particularly, but also the state of Wyoming, and how they manage the bison in the area. And here's some information about the interagency bison management plan that happens, that working with tribal councils and other administrators. So Wyoming, Montana, other options there. So when all the herd is generally wild, it does have some management going on. You'll see some Wapitian elk. Of course, the most famous part is the elk that appear in Jackson Hole down in Grand Teton during the winter, but there are elk scattered throughout the park that graze throughout the park. And if you drive up, particularly from this direction, you will very likely see pronghorn first as you enter western Nebraska, western South Dakota. And as you go on through Wyoming and or Montana, you will see plenty of pronghorn. So keep an eye out for those across those plains there. And one of the newest reintroductions is wolves to the park. Wolves have been are and remain a little bit of a controversy for the park, but they were, and now again are, part of the natural natural ecosystem of the park, and they also draw a lot of visitors to hopefully see a gray wolf. Um, you can see the difference between wolves and coyotes. If you live around here, you may have and gone camping around here, you may have already heard a coyote. It's a lot different hearing a wolf, and then if you're lucky enough, seeing a wolf. And there's been changes in growth and dives in population since they were introduced in the mid 90s. There's Wolf Project reports. If you want to, you can read the report dating back to when they were first introduced all the way up into 2 years ago, and we're still waiting on the other one. And they'll map out the packs that live in the area, so you can see possibly where those packs kind of make the area if you want to make a wolf planning trip. So let's actually open up this 2021 one here and see what we have here. So it's a long report, 16 pages, but you can see where the packs are laid out. You can see they mostly live in the north area where packs overlap. In this area right above that J where it says Junction Butte is called the Lamar Valley, where a lot of the wolf activity goes, and that's where they were first released. And also along this area here, kind of between this 8 Mile and this Wapiti Lake option is the what's called the Hayden Valley is another hot spot for them. So if you're doing wildlife watching, those are places to key out and look for them. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service write up about wolf populations across the United States, covering wildlife areas where they're done. If you want to have other places to see wolves, that's there too, but they talk about that. Obviously, it's not national parks or interior that's managing that, so they just talk about wildlife areas. The cool thing is the library has a book called Yellowstone Wolves. It was published in 2020. Science of Discovery by it's edited by the main scientists, that main scientist Doug Smith, who is monitoring the wolves. So if you want to cover that history and learn a lot about the wolves and the reports there in Yellowstone, this is the book for you. It is checked out right now, but you can always place a hold on it if you'd like. If this is something that interests you, Yellowstone Forever is a separate not-for-profit, just like a Forest Park Forever, but they kind of focus on raising funds and raising awareness of other things that maybe the Park Service isn't as much concerned with as another concern for the park. So they are an official partner, but it's really interesting. So, and other ways to support the park, and we'll get back into other ways that they have as we talk about bears. Wolves, and then we have bears, two types of bears, black bears and grizzly bears. They are two different sizes. Oh, somebody has their hand up. If your hand up and you want to have a question, go and put the question there, and I'll try to get your question. Hopefully I have the resource. Hopefully I have the answer and or the resource that's going to help you with that. Sorry about that. Let's see. That is somebody. Sudhir Mehta has had their hand up. If you'd like to go ahead and chat and ask in there. So with bears, there are two types of bears. You will most likely and very likely see a black bear in the area, depending on the time you go. As the seasons go, bears will change their habits, and the different types of bears have slightly different habits throughout the season. But one of the things to plan for, there are areas that are closed for bear management, and the reason they do this are varied. Mostly they're backcountry areas, but they are some other roads that they close off, mostly due to the reason that particularly with the thaw, as the thaw, particularly this time of year, avalanches have happened throughout the winter. Other things other things may have happened throughout the winter. Bears are waking up from their hibernation. I don't know if you've slept for 5 months, but you probably wake up kind of hungry after that. And so some of the easiest high-powered food is if an avalanche happened and it covers up an elk or something like that, why not take a frozen meal right away? Makes it easy. You don't have to stock it, don't have to hunt it down. It's right there to eat and ready for you. So that's the reason some of these areas might be closed down for bear management. Of course, this is more important as you hike around. If you plan to do any kind of backcountry, even day hiking, that there will be areas that seasonally will be closed off for certain times of the year. So just keep a monitor on that, particularly if you're doing backcountry options. There are bear management areas where they either restrict or total ban on travel. So let's see. So another thing with safety is bringing bear spray, particularly if you're doing backcountry hiking to keep bears away. Coyotes, We live here in Missouri, probably familiar. If you've spent any time out in the woods, familiar with coyotes. And then another thing are eagles that live in the area. The golden eagle, particularly, is the key one. You also see bald eagles there in the area, but the golden eagle is a keystone species that has been kind of making a comeback in the park. So by itself. All right, safety. Always consider your safety and the space you keep between both grazing grazing animals and the predators of the park. So keep a good 100 yards, and if you don't know what 100 yards is, walk up to a football field and see what that is, and see how far you go from goalpost to goalpost. Keep a whole football field between you and the predators, and keep about a quarter of that between the buffalo. I would recommend myself keeping more if you ever possibly can. Of course, it's amazing how large animals can just sneak up on you. But yeah, remember your safety. Remember the animal safety. Just keep in mind that this disturbing or prompting a bear can cause the bear's removal or elimination from the park. So it's obviously for your safety, but also the animal safety. Even if there's no direct confrontation, a bear getting into your food or something like that can cause the animal to be removed. Um, and I mentioned food safety. We'll see if you do camping or anything like that around the park, you will often see something called a bear box. They're trying to this Yellowstone Forever, as I mentioned before, is trying to get bear boxes in every camp spot and also improve how these bear boxes will work. And this is where to put your food, anything that's touch food items, anything that's going to have any kind of smell inside this bear box. Um, and that's going to keep that away. And it's for obviously your item safety, but also for the bear's safety so that they don't get acclimated to human food and to the campgrounds, that they know that this is an easy meal. Um, just like every animal upon this earth, an easy meal is an easy meal, and bears like to do that. They aren't any different than any other animal. Um, one of the things to think about that flora and fauna effect is traffic jams. And so traffic jams are caused by, although the Yellowstone area, it's one of the most remote areas in the lower 48 states. It is, or the contiguous 48 states. It is, last year there were about 3.8 million visitors, so about 4 million visitors come to the area. While it is sparsely populated, a lot of people show up over the summer in the area, and there are very few roads to get around, and so you will experience traffic jams. Not only from volume of traffic, but also you'll experience things called bear jams that happen on the side of the road. Not just bear jams, but also other animal viewing jams that happen on the road. And that includes wolf jams for people spying wolves or anything like that. But also, uh, we have built roads in an area where there weren't roads before. The natural behavior of an animal, like I say, something easy. We built roads on what were easy places, like through passes and whatnot. That as elk and bison like to migrate, uh, as opposed to walking through the dense woods and forest, why not walk on the road? So you will see herds of bison on the road, and that may slow you down as you get around the park. And so be aware of that, but also for the animal safety and your vehicle's longevity. Fire is something that affects the flora of the park and also the fauna. Secondarily, it is a fire adapted ecosystem, and there's information about the fire management here. We can see areas that have been hit twice since the big fire in 1988, and all the areas of the park that have been hit. So it's pretty amazing. A lot of the park has been hit, but the park bounces back and it looks better afterwards. There's been a change in fire management for national parks in the last 20 odd years. Oh, look at that here live. It's snowing in Yellowstone. So this is something I'll bring up later about what the weather's going to be. All right, let's go and keep that going here. All right, and let's just talk about a little bit about general wildlife watching. Uh, Watching wildlife, you can see the distance and getting a long lens for your camera. There is abundant wildlife, so not only the megafauna to watch, you'll see a lot of people up there wanting to watch other things such as osprey and other other types of birds, and all the options here. So this is going to tell you, this National Park Service site is going to tell you where to go for certain types of the megafauna. There are areas that are frequently frequented a lot more often by that, and of course I mentioned the Lamar Valley, which is going to have nearly all of your megafauna, from bighorn sheep to pronghorn to mule deer, and everything there in that valley. It's sometimes called the American Serengeti, for a reason, that it is a beautiful place where a lot of wildlife crisscrosses there. It is a very abundant valley, but you can see there are all types of animals if you're interested in that. So from fish, reptiles, amphibians that are around. Does anybody have any question about the flora and fauna before I advance to the next slide? All right, let's move on to first peoples. So from the animals on through time after the Ice Age, of course, when animals move in, if you're a hunting people, which nearly all of humanity was for a long time, you will follow the animals afterwards. So, and then begin to have some of the experiences that that go here, just to recognize the land. So here's a little bit about the USGS again, Land of Burning Ground, the history of traditions of indigenous people in Yellowstone. So USGS has some items about that. We can also go in, if you're interested in recognizing native land, about how to see what native land is. And this is a resource for any type of knowledge, that if you're looking for any type of area, it has plotted out for a lot of indigenous peoples as to where their land originally was. And if you choose an area, you can see the people who have made claim to the land at one time or another, and it links out to their current, so some of their current tribal administration options here. So websites, Eastern Shoshone, we'll get into a little bit on that. So the National Park Service, obviously, as we saw before with the Buffalo Management Program, or the Bison Management Program, the the National Park Service does have a has begun a relationship with local Native American nations here. So this kind of covers that with bison, making sure the representation happens in the park, and other associated options, making sure the history of the People's Park is recognized. And you can see the current tribes that have at one time been associated with it and where they live now in the area here. I am so sorry about that. I muted myself because I coughed, and now I'm back. So let's talk about um, the Wind River area has powwows in the area that you can see, and the two nations have powwows that are happening. Some of the calendar hasn't gone up yet for these here, but you can see they happen in here in mid-July and late June and mid July, whether it be the Shoshone one or the Athete one in the Wind River area, and you can see what happens there. If wants to be part of your experience and part of your planning, obviously that was last year. I'm still trying to find the other ones that come up. I know they're coming up again this year. I saw a listing on a powwow site, but couldn't find it again as it was happening. So this might be of something of interest to you, something that maybe you did not think about. And they are open to the public. Often they'll have admission, or they'll have goods for sale there. But yeah. So there's also a little bit further away the Crow Fair that happens over near Little Bighorn, but that is about 3 hours, 4 hours away. But it does happen yearly as well, the Crow Fair 2023. And keep an eye out for that if that's something you want to go to as well. Let's move on to the next peoples that cross the land, and that are those are cowboys and mountain men and the like. And so in the area, because as Yellowstone's gained in popularity and particularly it's scenic, it's mountain scenery in the area. Let's talk a little bit about dude ranches and having that, let's say, cowboy-like experience and what we can experience with dude ranches. If you're interested in that type of experience, there is the Dude Ranchers Association. I have a link right here to the Wyoming Dude Ranchers. You can also, if you want to shift it to Montana or Idaho, you can find some as well there. And so these are the Dude Ranchers that are part of this organization, this trade organization, and you can review the individual websites. You can find out when they're open or closed. Some are open year round, some have open times. And it's a variety of experiences you will get with dude ranches, which include they can either be from a luxury dude ranch, so nice fancy doings where everything's cooked for and you just experience the beautiful scenery, to roughing it. You will go out and you will actually go on a working ranch and throw some hay, perhaps help out a little bit. It's going to obviously be a range of costs. Uh, so like I say, the range of activities, the range of accommodations, there's a working one, a traditional one, and the luxury one. Just consider the seasons you want to go and what might be available for you. This season now, you might be, if you're on a working one, you might be in the middle of a calving season, so you might have to deal with that. But if you want to just view something and have that cowboy experience, there are rodeos in the area. In particular, just to the east of the park in Cody is the Cody Stampede that has a main one, but there are scheduled events there throughout the summer. There's the Cody Night Rodeos, and we can see as they start in June what happens here, if there's anything you want to do. And so that's an experience you can have. They do happen in the evening, so it's a matter of where you might be staying, where you want to go. So that might be a matter of your plan. But yeah, so if you want to experience a Wild West rodeo, you can do that. Let's talk a little bit about outfitters and what they are. And those would be about outfitters that offer a variety of experiences either in the park or around the park. So what they offer, what I'm talking about for in the park, are adventures, including other activities, but in particular in the park, they offer, a lot of the outfitters offer mule and horseback, trail rides, llama rides. They offer like things that are sometimes called photo safaris. So they might take you to an area that might have a lot more wildlife than another thing, and they will usually supply your food, supply a pack animal or something like that if you want, kind of make that planning for you. They also offer, if you're interested in hunting in the area, of course, hunting is not allowed in the park, but is allowed on some of the forestry land, and particularly the private and state lands that surround the park, and also fishing, which is allowed in and around the park. Just to keep an eye out, Wyoming and of course Montana as well, I just want to kind of point out, does have a board of outfitters and professional guides, and that list is updated regularly, and so you can check out what that list is by going to their sites. Yeah, so they pay a fee, and so at least you have a third party you know that they report to. Now within in the park, or not, they aren't necessarily located within the park, but able to operate in the park, there are licensed outfitters. So horse, mule, and llama outfitters. And you say llama outfitters, that's wild. Well, there are llama outfitters that will go on a pack with you, so you only have to carry a little bit, and the llama can do some of the work for you. And these outfitters plan that for you. So. Venture alum, I do not know. You can ask them, but there are other outfitters that offer other types of experiences inside the park, whether it be a horse riding experience, a safari train experience, trail rides, all types of experiences for you, from fishing and also hunting if you're interested. So, all right. Does anybody have any questions about dude ranches and outfitters while we're here? Anything maybe you didn't think about it, or maybe you didn't know about that, but they are, of course, for the dude ranches, they are also offer accommodations and places to stay. The outfitters may offer accommodations on the trail. So up until that point, you may have to find your own accommodations till you contact the outfitter. All right, let's move on. Now you have some ideas of some of the experiences, how to make your experience better, so you always have everything with you. Let's look at a checklist of things to bring and why you're bringing these things. Of course, you have wildlife viewing, um, and with that, you want to bring a camera, and not just your cell phone camera, especially if you're viewing wildlife. If you're doing landscapes or something like that, your cell phone camera might be useful. But I find getting a more traditional camera with a long lens or a particular like an SLR camera is more useful if you plan on taking photos of particular wildlife and bringing your zoom lens, which brings us on to binoculars and spotting scope. And then also tripods, making sure your tripod, if you're using binoculars, particularly high-powered binoculars or high-powered spotting scope, which is a fancy name for a telescope, you want to bring a tripod. And also star maps, or also download an app for viewing the stars, because Yellowstone is a dark sky area. Let's talk a little bit about binoculars and spotting scopes, and you can use this for some of the other equipment you might want to do. I want to talk about two resources. One is called Masterfile Premier, and the other is called Gale General One File. They kind of review popular magazines that might review items, and for that. So if we go to research, I went to resources A to Z, look at Masterfile Premier. If we go to M, we go down to Masterfile Premier. I apologize, I might run a little bit long, and we can look up. So in Masterfile Premier, we can look up binoculars. Did I spell that right? Yes, I did. So we can look up binoculars, just a simple search here, and we can look that up, and we can see some reviews and some talk about binoculars coming from an astronomy magazine. But if we look up, for instance, if we look up spotting scope in this one, and we can see if there are reviews for spotting scopes. And we can see spotting scope, how to use glass using binoculars, or spotting scope as an art, ways to use that. So if you're unfamiliar with that, ways to improve your time, ways to improve your option using the spotting scope, so you don't have to learn on the job. So a spotting scope from Outdoor California, some reviews of spotting scopes and stuff like that you can see here. Let's go through the process just so we kind of see it again as to how to get the Gale General One file. So we go to research, it's called Gale General One file. Go to resources A to Z and G, Gale. It's alphabetical. So Gale General One file. We do have consumer reports. You may be thinking, why don't show that? But they cover more household goods as opposed to a lot of camping goods. You may find a review of your item, but these databases contain those outdoor magazines. So that's why I'm like backpacker and other types of backpacking stuff and camping items here. You could use this for this too here. So you can see some reviews for spotting scopes from different types of mostly hunting magazines, but also some photography magazines here. So there's ways you can look up reviews for items and not just the scopes I'm talking about. Look, it stopped snowing, and we'll talk about that again. But yeah. Things to bring some quality shoes. Of course, if you're hiking, you want to bring some solid hiking boots. But if you're doing hiking, you may walk a mile or two a day, and you'll want shoes that are going to hold together and be comfortable on your feet, so you're not wearing your feet out or your ankles or anything else like that. And bring all weather clothes, as we saw just 15 minutes ago about how it was snowing there in this webcam, and now it's not snowing. Bring a change of clothes, and make sure you have a change of clothes for all the types of weather you might experience here in Missouri, from the coldest to the warmest. But of course, you say, I'm going in late July. Why do I have to bring a coat like I would wear in December here? Well, as we saw there, it was snowing there in in the Old Faithful Basin. But so it can be you can have all the range of weather within a day in Yellowstone. Just as a heads up, kind of have that with you in your car or packed with you if you're doing travel. Bring a towel, make sure you stay dry, avoid that hypothermia. Things other bring a phone charger. You may be away from electricity, and of course, if you're doing backcountry hiking, bring some type of solar charger or a battery backup or a battery charger, one of those remote traveling chargers. Maybe a notebook isn't necessary. It's something I like to bring to write down a journal of what I did today, what I saw. Bring your, if you have something, this is the old Boy Scout in me, bring your multi-tool just to have it on you. You never know when you might need a little screwdriver or something to fix, have that ready in your pocket. Um, Flashlight or a headlamp. I would recommend bringing both. If you are camping, it can get very dark there. Lights might be out. People are respecting that dark sky zone. And so having that headlamp to look through your bag at 3 o'clock in the morning might be very useful. Or if you make a long drive, you get caught in the jam and you want to set up your camp space, that headlamp will come in very handy. Once again with the phone, the reason I have the little asterisk there is remember you might not have a signal all the time with the phone, but having your phone with you is useful. So don't always rely on your phone. And also bring money for fees. That would be like park fees, but also for tips, particularly if you're staying in a resort or dining out in whether it be West Yellowstone or some of the other dining areas there to tip your servers and anybody else that might be helping you that relies on tips for part of their income. Pers- Personal health, always bring your prescriptions, but also bring sun protection. Although it might get up to just 40 degrees, that sun can beat down, and being in that, being higher up in that reduced atmosphere can really bear down. That sun can bear down a lot faster, and you can get burned a lot faster than you might experience here in the Midwest at a much lower elevation. And also keep in mind about the breathing for prescription. If you're asthmatic or something, being up in a higher elevation might cause other issues beyond what you might experience here. And being in a different environment can too, if you have allergies or anything like that, you might experience something different there. Bear spray, particularly if you're doing the backcountry, mentioned bear spray before, insect repellent, and a little first aid kit to pack, whether it be a first aid kit in your car or a first aid kit to go in the backcountry or even just hiking for the day. Nourishments, bring a cooler bag if you like something cool, or a whole cooler. Bring some water containers, bottles. Make sure you're bringing clean water or a way to make clean water, whether it be a filter or ways to boil if you're doing backcountry such. And then if you enjoy, bring some hot drinks because the weather could be anything. So bring a thermos if you want to kind of warm up some coffee or hot chocolate or tea or whatever you may want to drink if you enjoy hot drinks. And then some snacks just throughout the day to have snacks. And just always remember when dealing with any type of food, remember that be bear aware as you're going through those options and how you handle snacks and your responsibility with those snacks and those food items. Getting around brings, oh, went too ahead. Bring some spare keys and make sure you have printed out maps or download your maps. That goes in with the phone. Don't always rely on your GPS to get you a place because you might not have a signal. So have those maps ready and plan that out. Have those maps ready as a printed option or already downloaded on your phone if you still have charge. Bring your day pack for just hiking around to keep your snacks in, and your change of clothes if you need to. Your insurance card and your roadside assistance number handy. All right, let's move on to camping and other lodging. Um, does anybody enjoy camping or maybe wants more of a luxury option here? Well, camping and lodging in Yellowstone in the park itself is managed by a single concessionaire, and that's Yellowstone National Park Lodges. So if you go to Yellowstone National Park Lodges.com, that is where you can reserve options in the park proper and also do experiences in the park proper. So within the borders of the national park, they manage this. So they have dining options that they tell their hours within the park. Also staying there are summer lodgings, there are camping, open and closing dates. So lodges have different times. Some lodges haven't even quite opened yet, but they will open very, very soon. You can see those options here, what those lodges are, different types of accommodations, and different places in the park. So when you plan for that, there is also multiple camping grounds around the park. And just keep in mind with the campgrounds, there are different types of campgrounds that are hard-sided and soft-sided, or a mixture of both that you can have. So yeah, so keep an eye out for that when planning, whether you have an RV or a trailer yourself, or you plan to do tent camping, or whether you want to get up close to maybe Bozeman or something and maybe rent an RV up there, or Billings and rent an RV there, or some other nearby town like Idaho Falls. There are rental options for renting those type of vehicles. But if you're doing tent camping, just be considerate about where you can go because there are some campgrounds. This is mostly due to bear safety where they don't allow soft-sided camping. Just for a real quick look at the map, and you can see this at the National Park Service site. A real quick look at the map as to where the campgrounds are. Of course, they don't consider where these options are for these camp. Oh, I zoomed out way too far. I love that wheel, don't I? But you can see where the campgrounds are spread out. They kind of evenly spread throughout the park, but if you want to get from one side to another, so getting from here to the Madison campground, this is something I know, up here towards the Lamar Valley, which is up in this area, it does take about an hour and a half or 2 hour drive, especially if one road is closed. Yeah, so those are the options there. And you can see what the rates are here, what the options are. So the dates that they're open and closed and what the rates are, what's how accessible it is. You can see that listing here. See, some aren't open yet. So, and the dates are still to be determined. And I'll show you a picture at the end of this if you want to stick around for the end for some interesting campground that I stayed at when I was in Yellowstone. If you're interested in something a little bit more spread out, that may not be tent camping. There are cabins in the area, in the national forest areas, and other options that are available for reservation. Old former abandoned ranger cabins and fire lookouts that you can reserve in areas. You can see this one's near Cody, and it's in a nice, beautiful valley. It's not in the park proper. It is in the Shoshone National Forest, but you can stay there and you can see the amenities there. This one has electricity, allows for overnights and things that are around there, whereas this one is not non-electric and just has a vault toilet. So different sorts of things, different types of remoteness for you. Of course, that would factor into your planning because sometimes the drive to these cabins are 40 minutes from a road. You can even use the site recreation.gov to just search for cabin and use the map to search for the cabins in the area. So, and anything that pops up with the name cabin is here. These aren't strictly cabins, but just based on the search, you can see what's all around here. So here's Deer Creek Cabin, all different types of cabins in the area. So now there are other types of camping options in the area. And those are, there are obviously private campgrounds, but there are also Forest Service campgrounds that are located in the area. But a lot of these are first come, first serve, whereas the other ones I showed you for inside the park proper. But some of these campgrounds are amazingly close to the park. So we can see this one is just outside of West Yellowstone, just north of West Yellowstone, which is a small little town of a couple hundred people. That is a portal that lies just outside of the park, but has a lot of amenities. They have restaurants and such, museums and everything like that. But you can see all the different types of campgrounds that are near the park. Of course, you're reliant on your timing and how long you can stay there and what the amenities are in the campground. So that might make a difference for you. But if you're doing that last minute trip to kind of go along an area, there's areas of the park, particularly if you're coming into the Beartooth Wilderness area, you can see all the different Forest Service campgrounds that are along the way through those roads in there. So there's a lot of camping spaces, but they leave you a little bit further out of the park, but they might be an option for you, particularly depending on your lead time for reservations. So does anybody have any questions about this lodging? This might be the most important one. So I'm going to pause for a little bit, get a drink of water and wait for a few questions. All right. Thank you for sticking around. If you do, sorry, I'm taking a little bit more than the hour. I put a lot in here because there's a lot to do and a lot to talk about. So. All right, let's talk a little bit about getting around the park. And I mentioned about the size of the park, about the whole Yellowstone ecosystem is about the size of one third of Missouri, and it's also bumpy. So think about the whole Ozarks as to what that ecosystem is. So in Yellowstone, there's things to do, but there's also different ways to get around depending on the season you go. I know a lot of travel happens in the summer, but there's options in the winter too about how you get around. So maybe you can't hike in the winter, but you can ski or snowshoe, or ride in on a snowmobile or snow coach, or even camp backcountry in the winter. And you could ride a bike. There's also boating and other options that you can do too. So you can boat in Yellowstone Lake or along some of the areas that are navigable by boat. And I mentioned the size of the park and the winding roads. So also keep in mind that the park only has 5 entrances that aren't always open all the times of the year. And so also that might be a factor for you too, for how you access the park. So it's not fully accessible, and some of these entrances are by road rather far apart, 80, 90, maybe even more, 100 miles apart. There are offered. So let's just take a look at the roads. Not all the roads are open at all the time, and we talked about the geological history and fires and other things like that. So also, as you do any kind of driving, check the road status on the national park. So you may want to bookmark this page. There will be listings and other options you can look up at whether you're a campground or some of the visitor centers as to what roads are open. Of course, you might not be able to access those from where you're going from, but you can see the roads that are open now, and you can see the roads. There are still 3 major roads that are closed for us right now to access. And I know this road here on the east side coming in from Cody, having gone last time, that it was only open until 11 o'clock that day because of avalanches that happened along the road. So that passed there. So you also want to check the time of day. Some of the roads might say they're open, but they might close halfway through the day. And so you would get turned around at the park entrance. So yeah, so check that road status map. They should be open by June, but yeah, just check that. And of course, there's other things that might happen with, if an earthquake happens, a landslide happens, or a fire is happening, some roads may or may not be open. Let's talk about some books. We're back here on our EBSCO ebooks. There is an awesome book here that's just a few years old, so it may need to be updated. 2012, about 10 years old here. It is unlimited user access, but scenic routes and byways, Yellowstone and Grand Teton National Parks. So I'll walk you through. If you're just driving on a road trip, there's a lot more you can learn about the road by looking at one of these books and seeing like roadside geology, what might be here, the history of the area. So some amazing things to stop along the way. That might seem like a boring spot when you first look at it, but getting a little bit more detail seem like more fun spots. One thing to consider with road, if you're doing a driving tour, is fuel. There is gas within the park, but just remember the distances you're driving, you don't want to run out of gas if you have a plan and waiting for that roadside assistance or some other sort of aid along the way. As long as you're keeping track of it, that shouldn't be an issue, but just keep an eye out for it. There are road tours. So there are companies. There are, once again, vendors like we saw with the mules and horses and llamas. There are different types of road-based tours for you. So these are companies that supply those road tours, whether it be on a bus or a van of some sort. So a guided tour with a guide, a professional guide, and a professional driver. So yeah, that's available for you. If you don't want to leave, if you want to leave the driving to somebody else, there are trails, there are day hikes, backcountry bicycling, boating, rock climbing in the area, skiing, snowshoeing, and pets. You can bring your pets. Pets are allowed in the park, but just consider getting around. Pets aren't allowed in every area. There is danger with pets and wolves and bison, and also pets can disturb some of the uh, grazing wildlife that are around, such as the bison. And you'll want to check onto that. The in-park lodging, the best is again at earliest. It also depends on your party size. It's a Yellowstone National Park lodges. Let's actually see. Let's actually go to the home and they'll have information here. Somebody mentioned August, number of guests. Just pretend there's two adults and 2 children. We'll do a 4-night stay, and you can check availability to see what we have in August, just as a sample to do. Um, it's still thinking, and all the lodges should be open then too. So you can see there's areas that are already sold out already for certain days, and there's other ones that are available. And you can see the nightly rates there. So it looks like most places are available, but this Mammoth Lodge, the Mammoth Hotel that's up in the northwest area of the park, has been booked out for certain days. So you could also, if you want to, hop from lodge to lodge to lodge if you so want to. Remember, this is peak time, but yeah, so that's what the lodges look like. So these are all available for that type size of party, except for this one. So hopefully that kind of like gives a basic answer to your question. And also remember there's lodging in the area as well. West Yellowstone has lodging, Cody has lodging, although it is a drive from Cody to the park. Billings has lodging, Bozeman has lodging. So those are larger cities, but they're also lodging in the area. Yeah. All right. Let's look at about finding travel books. I'm going to get us back to the resource Hoopla, um, and that's a book there. There are travel guides, and they're mostly listen to the subject area West Mountain, and you can already see right here Yellowstone, Grand Teton National Parks, Yellowstone Standoff. So this is the subject guides there, as well as other options in the West if you want to go backpacking. There's backpacking books. There is a particular book that just got published again this year that you'll find in Hoopla. And the reason I do Hoopla, the library actually has this book, but that book might be checked out. The good thing with Hoopla, as I mentioned earlier on at the beginning, if you have the credits to check out, this book will be available to you to take, and you can download it on your phone. So you can check it out a month ahead of time, make your plan, then come back the next month and use your credit again to check it out again and have it available for you. It's a pretty amazing book. It's full color. Um, the other option also on Hoopla is Lonely Planets, Yellowstone and Grand Teton guidebook that also has other things. They kind of have they're both those traditional kind of travel books, but they kind of like have a different audience and they kind of have different tact as to how they talk about items here and what you might get out of it. Lonely Planet is kind of like more focused toward the adventure traveler, whereas Frommer's is more focused toward the experienced traveler, so to speak, if you want to. And the good thing is I mean I obviously, as I said before, it's good to have a book because you can access it offline. You can just open it up, but these books can be available. You can download them and have them available offline for you as well on your phone device. Of course, you have to worry about charging. Um, Also consider things like ranger programs while you're there. There are amazing ranger programs that haven't come back, but they hopefully will be up soon as they update their site and as the park opens up. Really, after Memorial Day is really when the park gets going. Just the awesome thing about the ranger programs, always like national park ranger programs, because a lot of the people, the rangers that lead the programs are actually research scientists and people that curate the park or people that are working seasonally there that have as part of their uh, this is just a summer job for them and their off job, maybe they teach biology at the University of Montana or whatever, but they want to come down there and teach and be a teacher in the park to the public. So it's pretty amazing stuff. You get really good information, and it's part of their whole research thing. So once again, I give it back to just thinking about planning, how many days you want to spend, your level of comfort, your budget, the experience or experiences you want to have, the variety of experiences, the lead time you have, and that's going to go into your in-park lodging, hotel, and lodging. Of course, they fill up faster or later, and depending on how many days you want to spend there. Of course, you might have to hop between lodge to lodge, and then preparing those backup options. Having those contingencies, particularly when traveling around the park, using the roads to get around. All right, and let's this is just a little bit about me, and I mentioned here if you stick around to the end, the picture that you can see in the upper right is this is the campground right by the lake here that allows for tent camping, but you can see It's almost back in 2011 when I visited here. This is what that campground looked like. So voila. So that's what you could get. The campground was officially opened, and they did a little bit to clear out the tabletop, and we got 6 inches of snow right before we showed up as well. So they cleared it off, but we got a little bit more snow on top of that. So here we are. We ended up sleeping in the truck, but we had that camping spot, and there it is for you. Some of the same time here it is at the Old Faithful Basin, and here I am at the Continental Divide with about 4.5 feet of snow still on the ground from that winter. It was a very snowy winter. There were floods around. This is another very snowy winter, just as a heads up as you're planning, especially if you want to go early. All right. Thank you very much. I'm going to stick around for a little bit more. Sorry I ran long. Sorry I occupied your time. Hopefully this was very useful. If you have any more questions, please put them in the chat. I'm going to be around for about 5 more minutes, but this is officially the end. Thank you.